So I saw the movie Cats a couple days ago, and it's pretty bad and upsetting and confusing. It's not the worst movie I saw this year. That definitely goes to the Netflix movie Fractured, starring Sam Worthington. That movie was buns. It didn't make sense. I was kind of upset about 15 minutes into it, then I was pissed about an hour into it, and then I was livid by the end. And it was bad filmmaking. That wasn't even enjoyable. I didn't like anything about that. Cats is kind of fun in a bad way, but there are a couple of things about it that I think could have been prevented. It's the kind of movie that deserves analysis as to how bad it was, because a smarter person should have just stepped in and said, "Oh, that's not how movies are made, and we shouldn't do that." This is a movie that not only was supposed to generate some amount of money, as they put $100 million into the budget, but this is also a movie that they thought would get awards contention. No. So I'm kind of going to go through some of the things that were wrong with Cats and try to not be as hyperbolic as possible, but honestly, it deserves a lot of the criticism that it's been getting as of late. I'm also drinking unrelated to Cats. This is to mourn the loss in the playoffs from the Philadelphia Eagles. So Cats didn't drive me to drink. This is sports did. So the movie Cats is based on the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Cats. But the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical Cats is based on a collection of poems by T.S. Eliot. And when I originally saw that it was based on a collection of poems, I thought that the idea behind it was based off, some of the things mentioned in the poems, and that Andrew Lloyd Webber created his own story. No. Andrew Lloyd Webber, and this is from a Wikipedia article, so maybe I'm wrong, but to challenge himself, he literally took the poems word for word and set them to music. And this wasn't like an epic poem like Dante's Inferno or something, or it's not something that just all rhymed like a Shakespeare play. These are disjointed, not connected poems that no story could be derived from at any point. And you don't have to tell a traditional story when you make a movie or when you tell a story in a book or in a play. You can be experimental. That's fine. It is whether or not people are going to accept your experiment. And when it comes to Cats, it wasn't that accepted when it was released on Broadway. It came on Broadway and it was met to mixed reviews. Obviously, it's like the fourth longest running musical of all time. It has won awards. I think it won Best Musical. But what you have to understand about theater goers is that they can be more forgiving. They can be an eccentric lot of people. When you go see a play, you might see something weird. And there's a natural, willful suspension of disbelief that comes with going to see something like that. So if you go see a musical called Cats, and everyone's dressed as a cat, and there's no real story, but there's dancing, and there's songs, and there's lighting changes, you can go, okay, that was something. And you can walk out of it relatively, experience some relative amount of joy. I've seen enough improv in my life to know that Cats is not as weird as it gets when it comes to live theater. But the issue again comes, does it need to be adapted into a movie? Movies are their own medium, just like books, just like television, and just like live theater. The difference between movies and live theater is that in live theater, you have to get creative. If you look at something like the Lion King musical, which is a great Broadway musical, obviously based on the Disney animated cartoon, not that Buns remake, they can't be real lions. You're not expecting to see real lions. You're not expecting to see real animals at all. They're going to be wearing costumes. They're going to be making movements and stuff to mimic it. But you accept it because you know that they're limited. When you see a movie, you are seeing what you are supposed to see because there's CGI, there's computer editing. So if I see some half human, half cat hybrid, my brain doesn't say, oh, I'm supposed to just imagine that's a cat. My brain says, that's a monster. Why? And that's kind of the first mistake that they made. They thought that they needed to stay true to the idea of this costuming that's necessary in a live production that you don't need to do when you make a movie. And everything from there every decision that's made from there is more confusing because of their decision to do that. Uh, so it's upsetting. So just there, this was unnecessary. This didn't need $100 million to be put into it. It didn't ever need to be forced down the people's throats, but it exists. And I'm gonna spoil the entirety of the movie to the degree that you can spoil something that has no actual plot, really. So the way the movie Cats starts is we kind of see this big city that appears empty, and there are buildings in the city. And if you look at the buildings will have different names. They'll say things like uh, Catsino. There's a place called the Egyptian. There's like a milk bar. And it seems like Cats built this city, but everything's people size. So, despite the fact that it looks like it's a place where cats run the place, they've built everything to not be operable by them. Just the backdrop, the beginning of this movie sets you up in a situation where you go, I don't know where I am. This couldn't be the real world because I have never seen a casino. The Egyptian is kind of normal. That could just be a cat themed place that they like because they are cats. But it's just so odd. They chose to make everything cat based when they're supposed to be normal cats in the real world. The reason I know they should be in some version of the real world is because the first thing we see in the movie is some human throw some cat into an alley. She just got like a cat in a bag. It's not a real cat. But the main character, Victoria, is in this bag, gets thrown into the alley, and all these other cats kind of come around and they're like, ooh, we got a new cat out here. And everybody kind of moves like that. And again, if it's theater, you kind of get it. You're going for something. You're trying to set a mood. You're trying to mimic cats. And so they're trying to do the same thing here, but it comes off creepy. You're like, oh man, these monster cats look like they might attack that other monster cat. And the first song of this musical, I don't know what it's called. I haven't looked it up, but I think it's called like Jellicle Cats. Jellicle is a made up word, and I think it dominates the word count of this entire movie. And that's including articles, prepositions, anything else. They say Jellicle more than anything else. Partially because in this song they say Jellicle, Jellicle, Jellicle cat over and over again. And it's made up word and you don't know what it means and they never explain it. They allude to explaining it a couple times in the movie. I walked out of it with my friends who I saw it with and they're like, oh, what's a Jellicle cat, by the way? And I said, it's not real. It's nothing. And, you know, they did what you do when you have the technology, Googled it and said, oh, well, why did they keep talking about like being a Jellicle cat? I have no idea. So that song is kind of weird. It's upbeat and catchy, but you can't really understand anything. A lot of times the opening number of a musical is supposed to give you an idea of what the show's about or kind of where it's going to be headed. You know, the opening number for Rant, Seasons of Love. You know, it's going to be about this year, ups and downs of a collection of people because there's a bunch of people singing the first song. Cool, you get it. It doesn't necessarily say it's about rent and AIDS and all this other stuff, but you kind of get it. Hairspray, Good Morning Baltimore, you say, okay, our protagonist is this big girl. You know, she loves to dance. She's got all this energy. She wants to be famous. It's going to be about things like that and how she loves the city in spite of all these bad things. Cats, Jellicle cats. Nonsense. We're diving right in. The other thing about this is that what you're supposed to enjoy when you see a musical like Cats is the singing and dancing. And one of the things that makes dance enjoyable is the fact that when you see it live, it seems unbelievable. You see someone do a backflip live, I'm like, whoa, I can't believe that happened. It looked incredible. Early on in the Jellicle Cat song, you see things that aren't possible. And people are clearly on wires doing flips that can't happen. And that takes away from the sort of exhibition aspect of dancing. It's supposed to be real and look impossible. It's not supposed to just be flat out impossible because then you're just watching another movie. You might as well watch a superhero film and say, oh man, flying, cool, whatever. So Tom Hooper just sort of misunderstands what's good about a musical like Cats. And Jellicle Cats just gets it off to a terrible start. Once that song is over, Tom Hooper has kind of inserted moments to create a narrative to follow when you're watching Cats, but it doesn't really explain enough. So, Jellicle Cats is over, bunch of cats out here, cat monsters. And they then ask the protagonist what her name is, and she says Victoria, and they say, "You must have another name." Don't know what that means. You'll find out later on that all the other cats in this have crazy names, and I guess they got their names from their behavior or something. And they sort of explain to her that what's happening with the Jellicle cats is that there's going to be a Jellicle choice made where they go to the heavy side layer and get to live a new cat life. If you want to know what the heavy side layer is, they never explain that. If you want to know why only Jellicle cats can get this choice made for them, don't explain that. If you want to know why there's just one person who can make this choice, even though they seem to enact no sort of magic on the individual chosen, they don't explain that. And it's so weird. So they kind of explain that to her. And from there, the musical is really just an introduction of different cats and kind of one issue that's occurring. While they're introducing all these cats and why they kind of want to be chosen for the Jellicle choice, there's one cat by the name of Macavity who is sneaking around. And he wants to get chosen, but we don't know that at the beginning. We just know he's creepy. And every time he shows up, everybody's like, "Oh, we got to get out of here. That's Macavity." And it's Idris Elba's cat, and he apparently has magic, but there's also a cat named Mr. Mistopheles who's magic. But Mr. Mistopheles is like a magician at a children's birthday party, and Idris Elba is like Chris Angel. Like, Mr. Mistopheles can pull a rabbit out of his hat, make flowers appear out of nowhere from up his sleeve, and Macavity would like make your bottom half of your legs walk away from your torso. So there are magical cats. This movie reaches peak insanity at the very beginning of the movie. So we've gone through the first song, we've gone through the second song. And another thing, Tom Hooper doesn't know what he's doing with a camera when he films dancing. He doesn't linger enough so that you can see the moves and appreciate them. The second song is very much this ballet type thing done with the main cat, Victoria, who apparently is a trained dancer. This is the first movie I think she's done. But you don't really get to appreciate it in this close moment where there's not a lot else going on. There's not a lot of other cats running around doing cat stuff. It's supposed to be focused on her, and he still cuts the camera too much. It needs to linger. It needs to just back out and let you appreciate it or pan around it. I mean, seriously, if you watched Beauty and the Beast, the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast does a better job of showing dancing between animated characters than this movie does. So, the peak insanity at the beginning. We're about 15 minutes into this movie, and they introduce us to Jelly Ann Dots, Rebel Wilson's cat. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know a lot of Rebel Wilson fans, but this movie made me hate her more than I dislike her now. Her cat is supposed to be, I think, a tabby cat, meaning that it's out of shape and lazy. And her her musical number involves her talking about how she seems lazy, but she's organized the mice to work for her and the cockroaches to work for her. And so there are these scenes where we already deal with this world of monster cats, where they reveal monster mice who aren't real mice, but are people mice. And then they reveal cockroaches that are people cockroaches, and she eats several of them. And at one point during the dance number, she has her fur, unzips her fur, and has bedazzled fur throughout. And it's the freakiest moment. Of everything that happens in Cats, of everything that's insane, hers is the most upsetting. Because there are moments when you're watching the little people cockroach monsters and it's like on my face. So there's little people cockroaches going across the screen and monster cat faces watching in awe. It's the one part of this movie that I would say, if you chose of your own free will to go to under the influence of something in your own good spirits, you might freak out and leave at that point if it wasn't going well. Um, it's horrifying. And basically, Jelly Dots is an annoying Rebel Wilson type character. There are a bunch of jokes they put in for Rebel Wilson to say that don't make any sense, and they don't seem out of place at this point in the movie because the real serious moments haven't started yet, but they do seem stupid. And that's bad enough. So Rebel Wilson has her number. The next cat introduced is Jason Derulo, who literally just leaps from nowhere and says, "Let's dance," and goes into his song. He is Rum Tum Tugger, and he is a curious cat, which apparently just means that he is a super sexual cat who wants to bang. And that's his character. There's nothing else to explain. Honestly, Jason Derulo kind of does a good job. However, Jason Derulo also wears boots as a cat. It's the kind of tiny thing that for dancing purposes, you might need to have a certain type of footwear. Obviously, the original Cats was, I think, probably more traditional ballet, contemporary style dancing. And in this, they kind of wanted to incorporate some modern things like hip hop dancing. And for that, sometimes you need boots so you can glide and do kind of some interesting stuff. My friends, who, again, they aren't as critical as me, were immediately confused about that. One of them said, he literally said, "I thought they forgot to take Jason Derulo's shoes because why would a cat have shoes?" Which is a good point. Because also within them, again, they're supposed to be in some sort of human world. So it's not even just that he's wearing shoes because this is their world and they have their own clothing. At one point, a cat steps into shoes that are meant for a human. So do they have clothing or not? And who's making it for them? You never see another human outside of that one we see at the very beginning. Yeah, reliving this in my mind, it's worse than I thought it was. God, it's just upsetting. Anyway, so Jason Derulo's cat Rum Tum Tugger does his little song, and then, if I'm not mistaken, after that point, we meet Grisabella, who is Jennifer Hudson's cat, and she gets bullied by the other cats. Never explained. Victoria goes outside, Grisabella looks kind of upset, and then these other cats are like, "Ooh, it's that bitch Grisabella. Let's bully her." And they bully her. And she cries and walks away. The most that's explained about her is that apparently she went off with McCavity of her own accord. And again, we know nothing about McCavity except that he has magic. And Grisabella going off with him was something terrible. What the headcanon that I have created is that McCavity is some sort of pimp and that Grisabella willingly agreed to work for him. And now people don't respect her because they don't respect sex workers in the Cats universe. You can come up with whatever you want. Honestly, I think mine's pretty good. So Grisabella slinks off. And then the next cat introduced is James Corden's cat. I think James Corden works as a talk show host. I think that the decision to continually try to put him in movies may not be the best idea. His cat is fat and he wants to be reborn so he can be skinny, but only to get fat again. And his song is comedic, but there are also breaks taken in the song to joke about like these comedy bits. Like the song will go and then there's no joke in there, and then somebody like tries to launch him onto a trash can by jumping on one end of a board, and there's a break where he goes, "Well, look at me, I'm fat. You weren't gonna work. Why would you do that? You've embarrassed me." And it's stupid. And so that happens, and around this time, McCavity has literally started to steal people with his magic. It's not explained how he can do this, but he simply snaps his fingers and they disappear in smoke. Mind freak. That's it. And his goal, we find out eventually, is that he's trying to limit the number of Jellicle cats so that he has to get chosen for the Jellicle choice. So far, we've met one fat cat. We've met the cat who bangs. We met the cat who is known for being fat, and we know McCavity. Eventually, and I'm trying to remember all these cats. There's two cats I actually do like. There's a song called between Rumple Teaser and Mongo Jerry. Yes, all the cats' names are insane like this. And they talk about being mischievous cats. And honestly, it's the moment of the musical where it kind of makes sense. They kind of are just walking with Victoria. They're taking her through this house and they're talking about, and every time something bad happens, it was Rumble Teaser, Mongo Jerry, and some other stuff about not being there for it, even though people suspect them, and they just leave it at that. It's kind of a fun song. There's not a lot of other cat nonsense going on behind them, and that one's kind of enjoyable. But what eventually happens is that they leave Victoria in this house, and a dog is coming. So Mr. Mistopheles, who has apparently slowly started to develop romantic interest in Victoria, again, it's out of nowhere. He has to come save her. Then they go to the Egyptian, where she can finally meet old Deuteronomy, who is Dame Judi Dench. And they did Dame Judi Dench so dirty in this movie. I mean, this woman deserves better in her old age. The creepiest thing about her is that she is a cat who appears to be wearing cat fur that matches hers. And so it's like she killed another cat to wear. And she's the most respected cat who has this, again, magical ability to choose who the Jellicle choice gets made for. So they meet old Deuteronomy and they walk into the Egyptian, which is like this abandoned theater. And in the abandoned theater, they have an extended dance break. And the dance break is probably the moment that is most well suited for the stage version, because that's normal. You do not have a bunch of cuts. When there's a dance break happening on stage, you sit back, you have one place to look, and you can notice individual dancers. Again, Tom Hooper decides to keep cutting away every time there's a new dance sequence happening. Now that you do get to focus for a minute on certain solos, but it just doesn't linger long enough, so you don't really start to enjoy it. It's where the musical actually gets boring, because there's not a lot of insanity happening. You're used to these cat monsters being on screen, and nobody's really singing a song for you to follow along with, or kind of even like toe tap to. So you just get Monster Mash for, let's say, 10 minutes. Some of the dancing, pretty good. I thought was pretty cool, but it also looked uncanny because they have CGI bodies. And so they have these two hip hop dancers that are known as the Les Twins in the movie. And they're doing like this isolation stuff, which is supposed to look freaky in real life. And it looks disturbing when you factor in their fake bodies doing it. And at times it doesn't look like they're touching the ground. Again, it shouldn't freak you out that much, but the movie hasn't given you a baseline for what to expect and what you should be seeing. It's broken all these rules and sort of mixed things together. So when you watch it, you have no choice but to be horrified. Anyway, that happens. Then Victoria sneaks out of the Egyptian for no reason. She sees Grisabella again, who again is very sad because I guess she's not allowed in there because she's some sort of sex worker. And she sings part of Memory and starts to cry, like ugly cry, like snot dripping into her mouth cry. And while I respect Jennifer Hudson as a singer, as a performer, as an actress, it's so out of place with what we've watched throughout the rest of this movie that you just think she's crazy. That in this moment where she's singing her heart out about memories all alone in the moonlight, you don't know why she's so dramatic and everybody else thinks it's fun to bully her. And so you have this serious drama scene in a movie that's played out for almost everybody else as something fun and almost a comedy, where Rebel Wilson keeps making cat puns and James Corden is making jokes about being fat and being hit in the private area. What is this? So they take what's supposed to be this serious moment and just try to plop it in. And this would go for the musical as well, so I can't totally blame the movie for it, but it doesn't connect with the audience. Not with everything we've seen, not with all the other questions we have. And so Grizzlebella walks off into an alley. Again, the nature of this, there's no story, so people just sometimes disappear. And so Victoria goes back in, and the next cat we meet is the railway cat who tap dances. And Tom Hooper does actually a good job with the camera during the tap dance number he does. He cuts too much again to up top. It looks fake. If you have somebody tap dancing, like if you heard tap dancing and only saw my upper half, maybe I didn't do it. The point of the musical is to show that, hey, I got skills. And we see it to some degree, but he cuts too much. It's really annoying. It's bad on his part. He's not the only director who doesn't know how to shoot dancing. I've seen all 5 Step Up movies. Yes, there were 5 of them, and some of those have some questionable edits in it too. Uh, so then we meet the Railway Cat, and then we finally meet Taylor Swift's cat. And I don't know what's supposed to be happening, but apparently she is McCavity's new sex worker. She has catnip that she sprinkles on all the cats that kind of makes them pass out. And then she welcomes McCavity, who has stolen a lot of the other past Jellicle cats, but not all of them. Like Jason Derulo is still there. He is fine. He never gets taken. And she is supposed to, I think, be seducing the other cats. It takes a weird sexual turn that I don't understand because all the other cats look normal in the chest area, or I shouldn't say normal. They don't look like cats. They look like people in cat suits from the chest area. And Taylor Swift noticeably has some breasts in her chest area, and she shakes them, and it's out of place. So she's working to introduce McCavity, and then we see McCavity, who this entire movie we've seen him in this creepy coat, and he's just been sneaking around with his creepy coat and his hat and saying McCavity every time he disappears, or ineffable every time he disappears. And they picture him, they just show him stark naked up on some statue or something, and it is next to the entire Rebel Wilson number, the most haunting sight of the entire movie. Because there are other cats in this movie who are black, Jennifer Hudson, Jason Derulo, but for some reason, they made McCavity's cat, or Idris Elba rather, they made that cat's fur color the color of his skin. And it's the only cat that looks blatantly nude. And it upset me when I saw it because it just doesn't look right. It matches his skin color too well. And I don't know what's happening throughout most of that scene, but I could really only focus on that. And everybody's getting catnip. I think Mongo Jerry and Rumple Teaser helped. Um, so all that starts to happen. Oh, I forgot a cat. Ian McKellen, Sir Ian McKellen, is in this movie as well as a cat named Asparagus, or Gus for short, and he delivers the old man song from a musical that you really don't want to hear. Um, it's terrible. Ian McKellen's not a strong singer. That's okay. And it's supposed to be sweet and charming, and I didn't like it. But Ian McKellen thinks he's a cat throughout this movie. More than anybody else, he has weird cat mannerisms. He licks himself. He drinks out of a bowl of milk or water like you would expect. Uh, he's in a cat movie. That like they should have just made all of them be cats like him. He's only a human to the degree that he could not morph into a cat. And there's a moment in that when he's performing, because everybody's supposed to be performing for Dame Judi Dench's cat, Old Deuteronomy, where Dame Judi Dench, they keep cutting back to her face, just like watching, like, hmm. And he finishes, and she lifts up her leg, and I didn't ever need to see that in my life. I can't really physically do it, but she's just watching, and you just see her do this weird sex leg lift at Surrey and McKellen. I don't know what that implies, but along with Rebel Wilson and naked Idris Elba, I hated it. So, sorry, I've gone back and going forth. McCavity says, hey, I've stolen all the other Jellicle cats. P.S. He has not. Um, I think that you should choose me for the Jellicle choice. There's nobody left. And she just says, no, I won't do that. So he steals her. Because that's supposed to do something. And so all the cats are on this boat being watched by this other cat named Growl Tiger, who doesn't sing or do anything. He just gets knocked in the water later. And they're all trying to say to themselves, well, how do we get old Deuteronomy back? And then they do a song that I think is pretty well liked and pretty catchy. It's Mr. Mustafali's song. And basically the song is they sing a little bit and he talks about being magical and he tries, and then it doesn't work. And then they all sing with them and he tries and it doesn't work. And they do that and eventually it works because Old Deuteronomy appears behind them and they kind of keep singing it. And during that moment when there's I think at one point somebody floats across the screen, you get it because the whole song's been about magic and about how he can actually do magic, and he is a powerful magical cat, except he still can't do what McCavity does the way he does it. Whatever. We are almost at the end of this godforsaken movie. So old Deuteronomy comes back and the other cats break out because Rebel Wilson is able to once again take off her fur, and her and James Corden knock Growl Tiger into a river, and I guess they get back for the Jellicle choice. But the next thing that happens is Jennifer Hudson comes and she sings Memory, and she cries really hard again. And the whole time you're just saying, somebody get this girl a napkin or something, because it's ugly. It's not grotesque by any means. I would say that Viola Davis in Fences wins the award for just snot acting, but this is still pretty, like, in Fences, you get the context of what's happening. We still are making up what went wrong with Grizzlebella. But she sings that song, and Dame Judi Dench, for whatever arbitrary reason, maybe it's because the rest of the cats were bullying her, says, you're the Jellicle choice. And so she gets into a hot air balloon and floats into the sky. And McCavity appears and tries to jump on and ride up with her. And for no reason, loses his grip on the rope and gets trapped at the top of a statue when he falls off. And for some reason, his magic also doesn't work, which I also don't understand. And so Grizzlebella floats away in a hot air balloon to apparently not commit suicide but be reborn in some place called the Heaviside Layer. They then do the final number, and Dame Judi Dench breaks the fourth wall and talks to the audience about what a cat is and how to treat a cat, saying things like, a cat is not a dog. You should call a cat by his name. We've seen so much already. This movie's already been this whirlwind of insanity. To have a character break the fourth wall and say something to you like, now, do you really know about cats? I'm going to tell you the most basic things about cats. And I'm going to tell it to you mid-song, dressed as a monster cat. That's what it's like. It just, everything stops. It focuses on her. There's a couple other cats around. It's nutty. And then the movie's over. There's nothing else. Like, that happens. They do the final number. There's probably some big music swell I'm not remembering. And then it's over. Honestly, people were pissed. During the movie, I heard some girl say, what is even going on? Friend of mine went to the bathroom at one point and people walked out and said, why was it like that? It's just insanity. And again, this just shouldn't have happened. So much of what's wrong with this movie is the fact that they decided to transport it from a live stage to a movie because they thought it would make money, because they thought that it was something that could appeal to the masses. It can't. Cats is crazy. Cats is for theater nerds. And it is for a special type of theater nerd that is also a crazy cat person. And if they're not a crazy cat person, they need to be an experimental art person. There's no reason to sink $100 million into this and pretend it can contend for awards. So anyway, that was Cats. I really didn't like it. It's bad, but it's bad in a way that it's like these basic mistakes that a smarter person should have existed. It's not the worst movie I saw all year by any means. I wouldn't even say it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Again, the music is kind of fun. There are some good songs. Uh, the dancing, Tom Hooper learned how to work a camera. I really didn't like the way he shot this movie. Um, but, you know, it happened. Anyway, that was Cats.